Hi, I'm Emily Bell with Caption Max, and I've created a bunch of described media for classroom use over the last several years. We've gotten some great feedback from the teachers who've used these videos, so beyond what you already know about effectively using video in general as part of your lessons, here are a few tips for getting the most out of described programs. Slide 2, 6 tips. I'm sure you're aware that the best practice for all classroom video is for the instructor to watch it first, and that is, of course, important here too. Many of the videos that are appropriate for the classroom have some sort of lesson guide or instructional goals to go along with them, especially if you get the video from the DCMP. And I don't need to tell you that reading these is definitely helpful. Whenever possible, a video describer pays attention to these guides and the curriculum correlations when creating description for educational media, but that can be somewhat far removed from your specific objectives in your specific classroom. You know your lesson plan, and you know your students best. After watching the video yourself, you might feel the need to add additional description to a part of the lesson plan that you are focusing on, or maybe supplement certain descriptions for a particular student who could use more help. Which leads to point 2. The more description you listen to, the better you will get at doing it yourself. You'll internalize the conventions that describers use, and then it will be easier and more effective if you want to provide your own descriptions to classroom media, whether supplementing existing description or fixing an inaccessible video. As you just heard, there's more and more description on television these days, so turn it on once in a while. There are going to be future webinars about describing things yourself. Third, it's important to know that a video is described and to set that up for the students in advance. In addition to providing the class with background information, objectives, or an outline about the topic of the video, give them a brief definition of what video description is, because it's confusing when there's all of a sudden a second narrator talking. This is really important for the students who will be using the description, so they can be prepared to focus part of their attention on it, which is a skill developed through repetition. We've also had some comments from people who are not blind or visually impaired, who didn't understand what the description was, and felt like they were being talked down to and freaked out a little. And while that could be a good personal growth experience for them, to reduce agitation all around, it's best to just tell people that this video is described, and this is what that's for. Next slide, tip 4. It's a good idea to watch an entire program rather than just a short clip. This goes counter to the individual learning module concept, but because description is inserted where it fits best, the same visual elements aren't necessarily redescribed in every part of a program. So if it's a long show like a documentary, description users are going to get the most out of it if the program is treated as a whole, which can also help students better integrate the visual cues they may miss or misinterpret. However, don't let that stop you from going back and watching important parts of the video multiple times, or enabling students to repeat sections on their own. That's the best of both worlds. Number 5, and this is a biggie, how will this video be watched? If students are assigned to watch it individually, be sure that students who will need it know how to access the description and that the controls to do that are usable for them, whether that's a DVD with talking menu buttons or a streaming interface with screen reader accessible control buttons. Also make sure they can use the pause and rewind controls. That's really helpful to go back and listen again if you miss a description. If the students are broken up into small groups, turn the description on for them, so the students who need it don't have to negotiate with the other kids, because that's not really fair. If it's the whole class watching, turn the description on. Including all students in the exciting experience of watching TV and in participating in discussion is the whole point. Remember that DVD and web videos are easy to pause and rewind, so you can take a quick break for questions, or to encourage students to predict outcomes, or to replay a section at a student's request or if someone looks confused. If there are supplemental learning materials that you'll be using for students, such as quizzes or informational graphics or the final exam, you'll need to make sure those are accessible as well. That's a whole different webinar, but many of the same organizations that you're hearing from today are a good starting point for that. Last tip. As a teacher, you're undoubtedly going to assess student comprehension in some way after you show a video, whether that's an actual test or a more free-form discussion. Now, I know you're busy, but the members of the DLN would love your feedback. The website is on the next slide. Were students who use the description more engaged in class discussion than they usually are? Did they indicate a better understanding of the material? Along the lines of how closed captions are being used for literacy and language learning, did any of the students without visual impairments use the description or, by your measurements, benefit from it? We get really excited about anecdotes because they give us all ideas for improvement in research. So thanks for your time. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Joshua Mealy, Director of the VDRDC, who will be giving you sneak peeks at VDRDC technologies.